Anytime you've got a project, for example, or a team, sit down with everybody and their surveys. In reality, what we're doing is providing a common language so we make the best decision all the way around. So think of you put your autonomy trait, people with foot on the gas, to figure out where we're going. You put your conformity trait, the green dot on the right, to figure out how we're going to get there, all the details. And then you put your social ability trait on the right to tell everybody what we're doing.
Yep. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's guest is part 2 with Eileen Stephens. We're talking about Culture Index and how it's applicable to your team. So if you missed part 1, go back and check that out. That's talking more about how it's relevant, why it's important to your business, and all of the information that's relevant to that. Also, we have 2 other episodes with Eileen from a couple of years ago where we really dove into this for the first time, and it's got a very in-depth overview of Culture Index and what it is and how it can impact your organization. Today, we're going to be talking about some practical examples of it. So we're going to, if you haven't seen the video version of this podcast, you might want to check that out on YouTube and Facebook as well, because we've got visuals. You can see a sample of the survey, and she's going to go over that in detail and show how it interacts, how each other interacts with the different components and the different characteristics. So check out that. That is all available on YouTube and Facebook. Just search for Loc-Doc Security. But for now, grab a cup of coffee and join us for part 2 of the conversation with Eileen Stephens.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, so do you want to jump into some of the, because I like to get real practical with these types of things. So we've talked a little bit in theory of kind of what works and what doesn't work. We've got some surveys here that the personal information has been redacted, so that not to disclose any of those things, but to also kind of show what some of these traits start to look like in a real world application. What do you think?
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, so we should be able to pop this up on the screen, and this is an example of one of the surveys here, and this is a craftsman. So
let me just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So we take the world of people and we break them down into 19 typified patterns. This is not to put people inside of a box. It's simply because there's 66,000 different ways these traits can show up. If I gave you 66,000 options, it's not very practical.
Sure.
So what this really means is there's a little more than 5% of the population that really thinks the way that you do. That's why communication and being a leader can be difficult, because 95% of the time you're talking to somebody or working with somebody that doesn't think the same way as you do.
Well, how that shows up is, especially if you maybe fall into a category where you could be more dynamic or in a position of influence, you're communicating, and what is the response that you're getting from people? Yeah, I got it. Understood.
Right.
But like you just said, 95% of it is, I don't actually understand what just happened.
I don't really know exactly what you mean, right? And
but I don't want to disappoint
the boss, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you I don't know, or I don't want to disappoint. And so I go to try to figure it out. So one of my clients gave a great example a few weeks ago. He said, I have a great example of this. He told the engineers to design a paint booth. Mm-hmm. He's got a picture in his head. It's very clear what he wants. But that's all the direction that he gave. Mm-hmm. So the engineers spent a week on it. It was $32,000 worth of man hours labor designing the paint booth that is the best paint booth in the entire world, but their client can't afford it. So that miscommunication right there, $32,000 just in man hours, not frustration, not other projects that weren't worked on, etc.
Never happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it never happens in anybody's organization.
All right, so we've got this here. So you just said all the typified. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 19 typified patterns.
I like that. Okay, typified patterns, and this is one of them.
All right, so craftsmen are people that are they're team players. They're good at problem solving because they're deductively analytical. They're methodical. They're very fact-based decision making, and they take a lot of pride in their high quality work. So kind of what they are really driven to do, if you can see that green dot to the right-hand side of the arrow. So let's go through the traits. So the A trait is autonomy. The B is in boy, the yellow dot is social ability. The C trait is patience. And the D trait is conformity. Those are measured on a bell curve. So on those top 4 traits, think of that as like the car that you're buying. What you're looking at is not the number, but how far away the trait is from the arrow. So craftsmen with that green dot on the right, think of their identity or what they're really driven to do in the world is produce high quality work.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are people that also have very long-term memories. They remember what you trained them. They're thorough, they're accurate, they're precise. They like to solve problems. What they are not good at is advocating for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So survey traits, that top chart, that is who you are. That's the piece that's hardwired pretty early on. Job behaviors is a snapshot in time. That's good for about 3 to 6 months. And this is how, think of it like taking the temperature of the organization. So the last 2 traits, logic, the purple dot, and ingenuity, those are on a scale of 0 to 10, and those play off of those top 4 traits. Logic, think of that like when something doesn't go as expected. What's going to be the reaction? 10 sync with their heads, 0s wear their hearts on their sleeve. And ingenuity is inventiveness, original thinking, abstract thought. 10s in the world being Walt Disney, Elon Musk, 0 being very literal. So this particular individual is somebody that you can count on for doing high quality work and being very kind of calm in the storm. They are going to be more literal, a little more black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And that green dot, that conformity trait, think of that as like sticking your foot on the brake in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So if I stick my foot on the brake in the car or the truck, what does it keep me doing from running into trees or running into the ditch?
Yeah.
So when the green dot conformity is on the right-hand side of there, what these people do is keep us from running into the ditch because they make sure everything is buttoned up on the back side. But it's also more risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
So that trait starts out at NO until like KNOW.
Yeah.
Can we do this? No. Until I know if my name is on it, it can be done the right way, which by the way is my way, or to my standard.
Sure.
So they're cautious. They follow the rules. They do great quality work. They are not great at advocating for themselves.
So when you look at this in an actual business application, you're going to run across folks that have some general similarities to this. What is the best way to come to progress or actually start to get things done?
Okay, so you put people who have the green dot on the right-hand side of there where you want the details, handles, and you want the standards upheld and all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you put these people. Now, these people do have a clear view of right versus wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they feel like they've been, quote, wronged or something was unfair, they also have a long-term memory for that.
Mm-hmm.
Money for people like this is about fairness. And if you are a CEO or an executive, one thing you really kind of need to think about at this stage in time is millennials and Gen Z have zero problem talking about their salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be much more transparent in that, because if this person here is, oh, I make X, and this person here, oh, I make Y, and there's not a reason why,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to leave your organization. They won't tell you, but they're going to leave their organization because they feel like that was unfair.
Managing your facility, properties, and projects is hard enough. Trying to find an emailed quote in your overflowing inbox is just one more annoyance, especially if there are multiple versions. We're working hard to make your life easier by providing all the information you need in one place. Now you can request service at a date and time that works for you. And we're making it easier to see quotes and materials needed for specific openings, including photos, so that you can approve everything from the convenience of your phone or computer. Log in to start using it now. Visit customer.locdoc.net.
Now we start to navigate it. Do you want to pull up a different survey to show some
Can you
contrast?
scroll down just a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, so that last trait, that EU, is mental stamina. Think of that as number of batteries somebody has in their brain, especially when they need to act out a character.
Mm-hmm.
What we can notice about this person, think of it as they start their day with enough gas to drive 27 miles. Job behaviors, remember, is good for about 3 to 6 months. This changes based on projects and things that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're having to drive 44 miles. So that's overutilization. So back to one of the things about this particular pattern not being great at advocating for themselves, because they're very good at what they do. They're your subject matter experts. We can unintentionally put a lot on them and create some stress and not even realize we did it until it's a bigger deal.
Okay, so if I'm the manager of this individual or a supervisor or whatever, and I'm starting to look at this, and I can see that their EU is 27 in their natural state, and they're burning that 44 miles of gas. What are the things? Because there's obviously some variation in their colored dots where they're placed on the chart here. What are some things I need to be asking or things that I need to start to look into since they aren't great at advocating for themselves? What are the questions and the ways that I need to start helping them navigate some maybe less of a burnout on a daily basis?
Kind of figure out the why. Okay, so think of job behaviors. When you see shifts, that's where we start our detective work. So it doesn't look like a lot on a piece of paper, but just that autonomy shifting slightly more to the right is the way I would describe that. Is this person is probably taking some risks they're not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why might that happen? I might be new in the role. I might be taking on a new project, and I might not have clear expectations.
Okay.
And so I don't want to let somebody down, so I'm going to go try to figure it out. They're not drastically different. Yes, the yellow dot moves a lot to the left, so whatever they're working on is very fact and data based and very technical right now. My guess is this is more of a volume of work.
Okay.
So let's say this person was, for example, putting in a new ERP system. Well, that's project related. You know there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's when you don't know why you're seeing those shifting of those traits that we better find out.
Gotcha. Okay. So we see that potentially they feel like they've got a lot more data to deal with than they typically do. So maybe we got to understand what are the challenges that are there. Is there some additional support that you need, some additional knowledge that's there, some questions that can be answered to kind of alleviate that stress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but do they not have the direction that they're looking for? Do we kind of just throw them into something and they're having to figure it out? Or is it a project that they're working on? Or if this is kind of day in and day out, often what happens is because they're very good at what they do, we just give them more to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's time to add another resource.
Gotcha. So we also see here, obviously the C and the D shifts up a little bit, but it's still within context. So is that a concern?
Within the first standard deviation. So it's a little bit of a stretch, but not so much of a concern. The logic, the purple dot going from a 10 to a 5 is I'm just trying to figure out something about people right now.
Okay.
Ingenuity coming up from a 1 to a 5 is I'm really trying to come up with some new alternative ways of doing things.
So the current standard that either I was given or the standard that I've been trying to apply, maybe I have to redo that or apply some new processes or just be creative in the strategy by which I'm getting things done.
Yep, I got to kind of go grab some things from different industries maybe and morph it into something that works for us.
Okay. All right. So you want to look at another one now?
Sure.
All right. So this is another one here.
All right. So trailblazer. So the category names are kind of indicative of who these people are. So if you think about a trailblazer, likes to go blaze new trails, go where we've never been before. If you look at that autonomy trait, and again, it's not the number, you're looking at the distance from the arrow. This actually falls in the second standard deviation high where 14% of the population sits. So it means 84% of people on the planet will have the autonomy trait further to the left than this individual. Think of that red dot as sticking your foot on the gas in the car. Well, if I go out and stick, you're racing your car, right? Think of this trait being like the race car driver, right? Go out, take risks, build, go create new. If you go out and stick your foot on the gas, what you do is you move forward. So this is a forward-thinking, futuristic thinker. Mm-hmm. So when you are working with these individuals, what they're very motivated by is a challenge. They are kind of independent and hard-headed, and they do tend to under-communicate. That's their biggest challenge. They have a picture in their head, and, hey, team, here's flour and sugar, bake me a cake. Think they've been clear. But where you put your autonomy trait on the right is where you want growth and change. Mm-hmm. So primary drivers in anybody's brain are the autonomy trait, the red dot, and the conformity trait, the green dot. And so just in these two surveys, you've got somebody that's more macro, big picture, futuristic, change-oriented. And the survey we looked at before, the Craftsman, is focused on today, maintaining what has been built. So that makes a great team, but because we're built, all 4 traits are on the other side of the arrow, we do have to be much more intentional in our communication. Logic of 6. Again, this is on a scale of 0 to 10, the purple dot. Kind of midway, head versus heart when something doesn't go as expected. Ingenuity of 9. So ingenuity of 7 and above is higher. 10's Walt Disney, Elon Musk, Picasso, Newton. So in this person's brain, it's a popcorn machine of ideas every day. Not that we can do all of them. So, but then there will be some gems. So anybody that's got that level of abstract thought, give them a journal. We just want back of the napkin ideas. We can't do them all, but in there will be some gems. And sometimes there's a combination of ideas that then really makes the kind of the secret sauce.
All right. So outside of that, characteristics here or attributes that we say, okay, you see obviously a variation here. Other things that would be prominent in somebody like this that are challenges, positives to kind of look at inside of an organization.
So you put trailblazers in where you want growth and change. They do have social ability on the right-hand side of the yellow dot, but they're not kind of as charming as if it was the furthest trait to the right. So think of whatever trait is furthest on the right-hand side of that arrow is a trait that you shake hands with when you meet somebody or the primary thing that they're focused on. So what this person is focused on is change, growth, new, never satisfied, which isn't a problem from an internal motivator, but for the team, it can feel like they're not enough because as soon as you climb that mountain, it's like you're very motivated by challenge, this individual. So, hey, what's the next new challenge?
Sure.
So when you want growth and change, you put your autonomy trait, foot on the gas, growth, risk-oriented people. Where you want things maintained and things buttoned up, you put your green dot to the right-hand side of the arrow. The A trait to the right is macro. The autonomy trait, the conformity trait, the green dot to the right is micro details.
Gotcha. All right. So we want to look at the job behaviors associated.
Yeah. So if we look at this one, there's a few shifts going on, but think of this as right role, right time. The autonomy trait is coming down some, so it's like I'm not running as fast as I want to run. That C trait, that far on the left, patience, or in this case, impatience. This is a lot of intensity. This is multi-focus, multi-thinking, internal sense of urgency. Nothing's ever fast enough. When the C drops to the left, you can pick the impatience. You can typically pick these people up because they're very fidgety. They have a hard time sitting. So there's a lot of intensity that comes with that trait. And so this person likes to go out and build and grow. Logic coming down a little bit, trying to figure out something about the people side of the puzzle. But the mental stamina, the EU, is pretty close. So this would be an indication of somebody that's all in, maybe needs a little bit of a new challenge or not running quite as fast as they want to run. But traits are pretty similar.
All right. Are you ready to look at another one?
Yep, let's look at another one.
All right. Third one on the list here.
All right, an influencer. So that yellow dot, social ability, this is when it falls to the right-hand side of the arrow, these people are the glue in the organization or the connectors. They connect people and information because they're relationship driven. So they are persuasive and engaging, fun. They make it a really kind of a nice place to work. They think of influence people. That's what they're naturally gifted at. They do think out loud, so they always do want to check and verify commitments or requests versus just thinking out loud. Because if this is the boss and they say, hey, you know what, let's, here's an idea, go get our top customers iPads, and they're just thinking out loud while their team just heard go buy iPads and you know, instead it was just a thought or a brainstorm. So I always want to check and verify that because they are built to build relationships. They also don't want to disappoint people. So the other watch out for is we'll tend to take on too much because they don't want to disappoint people. But you put your social ability on the right-hand side, like the influencer, in where you want the collaboration, the building of culture, and the facilitating of information around the organization, because there's so much information that's lost in digital communication. Right, so this is the person or the people built like this. So they're the ones that are, did you hear about this order? Oh, no, what they actually meant by the email was X. These are the people that are filling in all of those gaps. And if you have gone to working virtually now, because these people are built to build relationships, you do need to reach out to them on a regular basis. You retain these people by building a relationship with them. If you don't build a relationship with them, they feel like they don't belong.
Interesting. All right, so we've got kind of a zigzag motion here. What other things are stick out about this particular pattern or these particular traits?
Okay, so in this particular individual, remember the A trait, foot on the gas, and the D trait, foot on the brake. Macro and micro. When those are stacked on top of each other in the survey traits, in this person's mind, they see macro and micro to equal degrees. That's what we refer to as AD conflict, which is not a disease. Nothing's wrong here. We just call it a conflict because there's a competing resource in the brain between macro and micro. That makes them great for bouncing ideas off of because they see all sides of the puzzle equally. And when you're working with somebody like this, sometimes they just get stuck because they've got an angel on their shoulder that tells them to go for it. They trait, and then the devil says, "Are you sure? You better go back and double check." So they do great quality work because they double check stuff, but sometimes they can just get stuck.
All right, so they could get stuck on some certain things. All right, so let's look at their job behaviors associated.
All right, so now we've got, think of it as this person starts their day with enough gas to drive 63 miles, and they're driving 33. So again, in the job behaviors, when you see those shifting of the traits, we just ask the question, why? Top 4 traits are pretty similar on both. The red arrow moves in relationship to that mental stamina number, but then we ask the question, why? Does this person work part-time? Are they starting to check out? This could be a sign of disengagement. Or are they ready for a new project? Or are they brand new in a role? Like all of those things can impact that. The logic of 1 on the survey traits definitely wears their hearts on their sleeve. You'll hear passion when things don't go as expected. They are moving that up to a 10. So think of it as kind of trying to take out the emotion in the decision making. Ingenuity of 7 again. So high ingenuity here going to revolve around relationships. So this is somebody I would, if this person was working for me, I'm going to find out why that E was dropping if this person is working full time. Do they need something more to do, or do we just put them in a new role, or are they starting to check out or quit and they just didn't tell us yet?
Gotcha. All right. So as you start to bring these things together, so now you've got these 3 different patterns, say to utilize that, and then now they're all working in the same organization, maybe on the same project. How do you start to see things work together where you play off each other's strengths? And then where are you? So I guess we can answer that in one question. And then where would you also see conflicts arise?
Okay. So one of the best practices, anytime you've got a project, for example, or a team, sit down with everybody and their surveys. You know, this in reality, what we're doing is providing a common language and going a little bit deeper, but often things that you pick up off of people anyway. So you're going to take that autonomy trait, the red dot on the right, and you put them where it's getting things started, growth, change, seeing into the future. What's the opportunity? This is a very opportunistic trait. So you put that person in and you count on them to have the foresight of what trends are coming, what challenges we might encounter, but the foot on the gas, the willingness to, drive how fast you were going around the track, right? To get things moving. You take your high social ability person and the yellow dot on the right, and this person, think of this as like your internal and or external public relations person. They're spreading the word and they're persuasive and engaging about it as well. And then you take your high conformity trait, the green dot to the right is the one that buttons everything up on the backside. So within that, you've kind of like got the perfect combination of all the different traits. Now where the conflict is going to happen, that autonomy trait on the right, person's going to under-communicate, have a vision in their head, under-communicate what they want, flour, sugar, bake me a cake, while the green dot on the right wants the clear expectations. So we've got to remove some of that risk for the conformity trait on the right. And then the social ability, we just have to check and verify the brainstorming versus action items.
It was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, we were in a meeting about something, and we were talking about, hey, we're going to try this, and boom, 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 and kind of this is going to be the best new thing ever. And then somebody asked the question, so if it doesn't, if things don't work, what is the what's the word that they used? What are the consequences if it doesn't work?
Yeah. What's the cost, or what's our plan B?
Yep.
Right?
And
that's the more cautious person.
My response was, the high D question, which is great to have in a meeting or in a brainstorming session, because if you're not, if from my perspective, if that's a lower trait for you, then that's not even something that's coming across your mindset, because you've only been thinking about the opportunity and the big thing, and this is going to be wonderful. And then somebody comes in with the
But what if?
But what if? And I would say this, based off of where I believe that this type of a program or a tool really creates the impact is, if you look back 2 years ago, that question would have internally frustrated me, because
Would have felt negative.
it would have felt negative.
A roadblock.
The way that I perceive it now is, that is something that just was not even on my radar. So yes, what do we need to consider that? Or we don't need to consider consequences at all. But it brings up the question where previously, when that question, it just felt like a obstruction. Mm-hmm. And now I can understand it as a positive question that can get us to the next level.
Yeah. So we make the best decision all the way around. So think of, you put your autonomy trait, people with foot on the gas, to figure out where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
You put your conformity trait, the green dot on the right, to figure out how we're going to get there,
Mm-hmm.
all the details. And then you put your social ability trait on the right to tell everybody what we're doing.
Yep.
At Loc-Doc Security, we believe your camera system should provide more than just surveillance. Being able to see exactly what's going on at your place of business from your phone or computer is fantastic. But what if there were more analytics giving you the ability to improve your business operations? Track how many people visited your location, stopped by your display, and even how often they passed by your store. Be alerted if someone was loitering, vandalizing your business, or even dumping trash. It's time for you to take advantage of this technology. Contact us today for more information about our cloud-based camera systems. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and property.
So I was I'll give you this example, and maybe you can talk to this a little bit, because again, really, like as we're going through this recording, I feel like there's this major value in this from a team growth perspective, because it starts to give you so much information and the ability to navigate difficulties. I was having a conversation the other day with somebody who, on their trait, they fall in the low D category. And they were frustrated, and they had frustrations build up over time because of some impact that, and when they started dialing in on the different either departments or people that they were having issues with, every single one of them were on the alternate side of that line. They were all on the high D side. And they felt like they were constantly being kind of pinned down on things that they weren't doing with a level of accuracy, or the things that, just details that were being missed. And they just felt like they were being piled on about that. And as we were navigating that conversation, it was, but those people are there for a reason, to make sure things are getting done accurately. And your job is to go out and do this particular thing. Now, how do we get those things to work together, not in conflict of each other?
So if you think about your classic outside sales, customer support operations model,
Mm-hmm.
the green dot on the right is usually your operations.
Mm-hmm.
Your green dot on the left is going to be your sales. So autonomy trait on the right, green dot on the left gives a lot of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a short-term memory. The nonconformist, the green dot on the left, has out-of-the-box thinking. And so they find workarounds for hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
But when the high D conformity trait says, oh, but wait, we need to keep not run into this tree, and there's a ditch over here, and all that is going to sound negative, harsh, an obstructionist,
Mm-hmm.
Always, saying no instead of how can we?
Mm-hmm.
What it's really trying to do is remove risk.
Mm-hmm.
So where you get most conflict, I find, in any relationships, but work in particular, when you have two high conformity people working together and they both think they're responsible for the body of work, they're going to get out their red pens and they're going to check each other's work. It's coming from a very conscientious standpoint. It just sends the unintended message, I don't trust you, which is about the most offensive thing
Sure.
you can do to that trait. And then your conformity trait on the right, the foot on the brake, remove risks, look at the nonconformist, like, I don't understand how you make it through life.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time you turn in an order, it's got 30% of the information that I need. Like you're sloppy, you know, I don't understand. Like You make my job so much harder. The key is setting up the game to win. So the definition of insanity, and doing the same thing again and expecting a different result, we change the game up. So maybe it's the salesperson and the operations person get on the phone with the customer at the same time to get all the information that high conformity person's going to want. Because the low conformity person probably isn't going to get it. And then if we're just pinging the customer 50 times, go back and ask this question. The customer's going to get frustrated. Why would we do that? Again, it's playing off each other's strengths, but it's understanding what that person brings to the table. And one of the things that out-of-the-box thinking of the nonconformist brings is, why are we doing it this way? And if COVID didn't teach us anything, it was that. Just because this was a great process or a way to do things 6 months ago or 2 years ago doesn't mean it's the most effective now.
Yeah.
So we need somebody testing the waters and asking these questions as well.
Oh, I can't agree with you more on that. That is one of the things that we have discovered through these processes. And when we sit down and have the conversations with people, it is all driven based off of that. Okay, here's where we are naturally. Here's what we're being asked to do. Is this achievable? What are the challenges associated with it? And then also, when those conflicts happen, understanding this trait is a positive in this particular role, and this is a positive trait in this particular role. We just have to figure out how we bring those understandings to the table and work collectively for what the end goal is versus utilizing that to kind of have that internal struggle.
Yeah. And like we talked about in the beginning, human nature is to go to the negative. And so we will naturally, without data and information and education, take those things as negative. But what you understand, when you understand what they're really trying to say and the gift of that trait, now we know how to work with each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. So the big challenge is when you utilize something like this, and this is a big, because our time kind of, I think, is probably coming to a close because we've gone probably significantly longer than we originally intended. But the value of something like this and a tool like this is huge. And I know in small business, a lot of times the conversation is that something that we should invest our money in? Is that something that we should put our efforts towards? And the thing I was actually talking to somebody the other day in relation to these types of applications. We in our world, if we needed to buy a new piece of equipment to do something, cut keys or drill a hole or whatever it is, we would spend less effort and energy making the decision to go invest in that piece of equipment because we can tangibly see the results now. And to me, and I said this exact statement probably 2 days ago, Culture Index is that tool in our business that we can get a major impact from, but we have to utilize it on a regular basis. It's no different than spending an X amount of dollars on a key machine and sitting it on the shelf and never using it. Something like this, you can get a major impact with the investment and then applying it on a regular basis, and you're getting that return regularly.
But you do have to use it, and that's why for our clients we do the workshop so that the leadership has, think of it like riding the bike, right? Instead of me handing you a manual on how to ride a bike, they're actually riding the bike, and it becomes really, just like you've done, part of the culture, which is where you get the major impact. And if we go back to what grows a business, like what are our appreciating assets? People are appreciating asset. They get better over time, and people want to grow. They want to do better. This is a tool or a program that helps them become a better version of themselves as well.
Yeah. And I guess just kind of close it up. If they want to reach out to you to find out more information, I know you do a whole discovery call with them, kind of go through the process and give lots of examples of information. So walk them through a quick process on that.
Okay, so what we let clients do or potential clients do is, this is very theoretical until you see your people. So we like to take surveys of your people. It's a survey. It's just 2 questions, takes less than 10 minutes. But out of that, we get a lot of information, and then we just step through that. And at that point, you'll know if this looks like something that's going to help you grow your top line, grow your bottom line, retain your people, and get your team working better together seamlessly.
And I think giving just that little example within a few minutes will show you the impact. The challenge, the next challenge is actually applying it and implementing it into your organization, which you provide the tools and resources to be able to do that. But if they want to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
Best way, probably my email, E as in Edward Stephens, STEPHENS @cultureindex.com. My cell phone, 630-664-6703. You can text me, or Chad also has all my information.
Yeah, we'll list it all in the description below, and it'll be resources available there. But I definitely would encourage anybody that says, "Hey, this might be something we need to check out," to definitely go down that path, because it's made a huge impact on our organization. So.
Yeah, and it's, we let you kick the tires on our dime, and it's going to take your people less than 10 minutes to complete the survey. We have about an hour call. Even if it were not a fit for you, you're still going to walk away with applicable information.
Absolutely. Eileen, thanks again for joining us today. It was a blast. Great information for our business, and hopefully great information for your businesses as well. Lots of information to digest. Make sure you connect with Eileen. She will give you a free demo to try out and test the tires for your organization. I highly recommend it. It's made major impacts for us, and I really, really believe in utilizing this to get the most out of your team and just work better together as an organization. Thank you for joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. You can check out the video version on YouTube and Facebook. Search for Loc-Doc Security. Subscribe on whatever audio platform that you're on, because we've got a new episode coming out next Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and we don't want you to miss it. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.